Hello beautiful people, it's your girl the Alien Cat and welcome back to another Palworld tutorial. For today's tutorial we are going to be going over how to create the perfect pals. This tutorial was actually requested by a fellow viewer, so thank you so much for the request. I appreciate it. If any of you have any requests of your own, feel free to leave a comment about them down below. There is a lot that we can go over and I'm going to be keeping this tutorial as general as I can. However, if you would like a more in-depth tutorial, feel free to leave a comment about that as well, and I can go over the passive skills. I am keeping this very general, mainly because there are so many different avenues that you can go on regarding specific types of pals. I will touch up on a few things, but again, I will be keeping this very general. First, I'm going to go over the specific types of skills that you're going to want to keep an eye out, depending on the types of pals you want to breed. I do also have a full list of passive skills and what each one does. I will leave a link for it in the description box. If you already know what type of pal you're looking to breed, feel free to skip to the following timestamps. Or if you already know all about the passive skills and everything, you can feel free to skip to this timestamp. So let's begin with the easiest one in my opinion, and that is the perfect traveling pal. The skills that you want to keep an eye out for are Nimble, Runner, Swift, and Legend. Nimble gives you a 10% increase in movement speed, Runner gives you a 20% increase in movement speed, and Swift gives you an increase of 30% in movement speed. The last skill is called Legend, and this one is a little bit tricky. Only a handful of pals have this skill as a passive skill, and those are Palladius, Necromus, Frostallion, Noct, and Jet Dragon. What makes this difficult is these legendary pals are very high level, making it very hard to try to catch them. However, if you are in the late game, you should be able to capture them. But even if you're not, I for one am nowhere near ready enough to try to capture these pals. You can still breed a very fast traveling pal with the 3 passive skills we mentioned before. Also, it's just a bit of a side note, there are passive skills that give an increase in movement speed, but they're in combination with other things, so I just wanted to keep the more movement speed specific skills on hand just because it's just easier. Now, let's go for the perfect worker pal. The skills that you want to keep an eye out for are Workaholic, Artisan, Serious, Lucky, Diet Lover, and Work Slave. Obviously, you can only have up to 4 passive skills within each pal, but these are just the general skills you want to look out for. Workaholic makes it so that the sanity of the pal decreases 15% slower. Artisan gives you an increase of 50% in work speed, while Serious gives you an increase of 20% in your work speed. Lucky gives you an increase of 15% in both work speed and attack. Diet Lover gives you a decrease of 15% in hunger, meaning that they won't have to stop and eat as often. And Work Slave is a bit tricky. While it gives you an increase of 30% in work speed, it gives you a decrease of 30% in attack. Now, this may not be a problem for you if you're looking for a pal to just be the perfect worker, you don't want it to even be involved in defending the base, and you don't want to use it for your own private party group thingy. And lastly, let's discuss the perfect fighting pal. Now, this specific one is a bit tricky, not so much in the sense of how to obtain the passive skills, but more so the combination can vary depending on the type of pal you're breeding and what you're looking for. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we're going to keep this very general. If you want more specifics, we can either discuss them in the comments, or I can make a slightly more in-depth guide specifically regarding fighting pals. There are many things that you can go for, including passive skills, which enable and decrease damage taken by certain elements. Passive skills that can help the player out, such as increasing your player's attack or defense, and so on. With all of this said, I do believe the more general passive skills you're going to be looking out for are going to be Brave, Ferocious, Hooligan, Lucky, Musclehead, Aggressive, Hard Skin, Masochist, Burly Body, and Legend. These passive skills have a combination of increase in attacks, some have an increase in defense, and some have a bit of a mix. Brave gives you a 10% increase in attack. Ferocious gives you a 20% increase in attack. Lucky gives a 15% increase in attack and also in work speed. Hooligan gives you a 15% in attack while giving you a decrease of 10% in work speed. Musclehead gives you an increase of 30% in attack while giving you a decrease of 50% in work speed. Aggressive gives you an increase of 10% in attack. However, it does have a decrease of 10% in defense, which may not be the most ideal, but again, it depends on what you're going for. Hard Skin gives you a 10% increase in defense. Masochist gives you a 15 increase in defense while giving you a 10% decrease in attack, which again may not be the most ideal, but it depends on what you're looking for. Burly Body gives you an increase of 20% in defense. And lastly, Legend gives you a 20% increase in attack and defense, along with a 50% increase in movement speed. Now, regarding this specific thing, I'm not going to tell you what is the most efficient combination because, again, it really depends on what you're going for. However, I do believe if you want to go for a more balanced approach, you can try to go for Brave, Ferocious, Hard Skin, and Burly Body. That way you have an increase in both attack and defense without lowering anything else. Or if you're really keen on having the PAL with the most attack damage, you can always go for a combination of Musclehead, Hooligan, Ferocious, and Brave. That way, at the very least, you have a decrease in work speed without it decreasing your PAL's defense. You can also replace any of the skills with Legend, but as I've also mentioned previously, it is a much more difficult passive skill to obtain, especially during the beginning and mid-game. The Legend skill is more so of a mid to end game type of skill that you can obtain easily, at least. So just keep that in mind while you're breeding your pals. Equally, you can also replace any of the passive skills with Lucky, as this skill is a lot more easily obtained, especially at the beginning of the game. Now that we've discussed the different combinations that you can use for whatever pal you're looking for, let's see how this works in practice. Thanks to Palworld's new update, we now have this brand new tool that we can use, which allows us to take a closer look at the pal's attack and defense. However, it does not show us the passive skills of said pals, which is kind of a shame, but maybe that will be changed in the future, I hope. But at least it is a good indication that it can give you regarding a pal's attack and health and defense, which can be used for IV breeding, as in the general health and attack and defense of the pal, regardless of the passive skills. Another thing I wanted to point out is that even if you know exactly which pal you want to breed, for example, let's go for Anubis. There are so many combinations that you can go for that it can kind of be just a little bit overwhelming, to say the very least. And sometimes I feel that when I know exactly which pal I want, but because there are so many combinations, it can be really hard for me to decide on which combination I want to go for, because within each combination there are different pals with different passive skills that can be used in other combinations, and it can get overwhelming. So if you want to go for a lazier but slightly easier approach in a way, like I do, is just go for any pals that have good enough passive skills that even if they don't quite fit what I'm specifically looking for, I can still utilize them for other pals that I want to breed, and can work as something out in the future, because at the end of the day, this is the type of thing that does take a lot of prep, especially the more specific you want to be. Especially because the more specific you want to be, the more overwhelming this whole process can be. Now, there are specific pals that don't have a lot of combos. For example, Lylene, Griswold, and even Vixie, which can make the breeding process and skill of finding process just a little bit easier. Once you have the pals that you want, the breeding process can take its next step. I do have a guide on how to breed in general, where I discuss the process of making cakes and the ingredients that you need, because you need to make cakes in order to breed in Palworld. So if you would like to learn how to make cakes and where to find the ingredients that you need, you can go and check out the video link that will most likely be on the top right of the screen. I will also leave a link for it in the description box. But anyway, once you have the pals that you want, you can place the breeding combo within the breeding ranch, and then they will begin the process of making an egg. The process itself takes about 5 minutes, and once they are done, they will produce an egg, which can later be placed in the egg incubator and then hatch it. I will show you what that looks like as well. And let's also see the combinations that we have with the breeding pair that we have here. One thing to also keep in mind during this breeding process is that while you are breeding pals with the skills that you want, it's not a 100% guarantee each time that you're going to get the skills, but having them within the mating duo does increase your chances of getting the skills that you actually want. So it may take some trial and error until you get the exact skills that you want. So be patient and have fun with it. And that is how you breed the perfect combos for your pals in Palworld. Thank you all so much for tuning on in. I appreciate it. If you enjoyed this tutorial and found it informative, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos every week. If you have any questions about anything or if you would like a tutorial about something specific, feel free to leave a comment about it down below. Until next time.